Good morning, and for those of you who happen to be in Europe, good afternoon. My name is Winston Fritsch. I'm a senior fellow at CEBRI and also one of the coordinators of the Environment and Climate Change Group at CEBRI. And I want to welcome you on behalf of both CEBRI and the Norwegian Consulate in Rio, which is here represented by Consul Marianne Fosland, to this seminar on a very, very important theme, which is the future of green hydrogen in transition. I'm here just to introduce it because then Rafaela Guedes, who is a senior fellow at the Energy Transition Group in CEBRI, will take over, introduce the panelists, and give you a broader perspective on what we have ahead of us this morning. Let me just say a few words with a kind of personal testimony. 20 or 30 years ago, we had a very benign view of climate change and the transition associated with that. Hydrogen played a nice role, like a kind of heaven promised for the future, where we all be well with this funny thing that produces energy without CO2, which produces water when it is burned. Then we'll go to heaven in the second half of the century. Now, with increasing dramatic views expressed by the scientists in the United Nations panel on climate change, this view has changed completely because it became urgent. The second half of the century became the first. And we have to transition much faster, maybe 2 or 3 decades. And then that's why green hydrogen came to the fore. We have to accelerate the transition with technologies and demands that we don't know yet. That's the challenge of green hydrogen. It was posed by the urgency of climate. The scientists were lazily, nicely working at universities with a long horizon ahead. And the guys that finance it will have to take greater risks to go forward with technologies which are still improving. And hydrogen has some peculiar things, I mean, green hydrogen especially. The first is that it consumes very much energy. Energy costs are an important part of the picture. That makes it geography specific. Energy costs are, like all input costs, very location specific. And that's why I think the seminar, which points to Brazil and Norway, this is the title of the seminar, is very important. We can always talk about hydrogen in general, but when you talk specifically about where hydrogen is going to happen, what's going to happen in this industry, you have to be location specific because of the cost of producing it, and also because something that hydrogen has in common with gas, but in a much more dramatic way, which is transportation costs. And that depends on existing infrastructure, which we don't have in Brazil, and we also don't have in Norway as well. So this is also another challenge, because it's not only to produce energy, in which energy costs are important, but to transport it, where infrastructure, non-existing infrastructure, except for few cases, do not exist as well. Last but not least, and that's a good point, that's a good thing, hydrogen should not be viewed only as an energy input. It's also an input for a chain of products like ammonia, urea, methanol, you name it, which can also be used to transport hydrogen, to be reconverted into hydrogen. So this is a very complex theme. So what I say by way of closing of this introduction is that for you that are here expecting to hear solutions from the specialists, leave here all expectations that you have as you enter. It's like the Dante Inferno. Leave here your expectations, you that enter it. We're going to have here an enlightened discussion about a problem that does not have solutions. There's no magic solutions. It will be country specific and it will take time. And a lot of money will be spent on wrong things, but in the end, we must do it. So that's a nice story. I mean, let's discuss something that will happen. The people that are here know how to do it, but they don't know the end of the story. So Good luck, and I pass the word to Council Marianne.
Thank you very much. Good words there, a good reminder. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Director Machado, Ms. Guedes, Mr. Fritsch, representatives from Norwegian and Brazilian companies and institutions, and dear friends. Let me start by thanking CEBRI for our continued collaboration. You know, this is the third consecutive year that we come together to discuss and strengthen our dialogue on topics related to green technologies and energy transition. For us, CEBRI is a strategic partner in Brazil. And I would like to congratulate you, and particularly the work of the Núcleo Energia, which has in the past years brought significant contributions to the topic of energy transition. And therefore, I'm very happy to be with you here today discussing the role of hydrogen in our common path towards energy transition. You know, this is a matter that Norway is addressing with priority. Hydrogen has the potential to realize low to zero emission solutions in sectors like transportation, industry, and shipping, and thus to be the foundation for numerous green jobs, a goal very keen to us. Hydrogen is also a good partner to an energy sector with an expected tremendous growth in variable, renewable energy sources, which is the case for Brazil and for us. In June this year, the Norwegian government presented a white paper, Energy to Work, Long-Term Value Creation from Norwegian Energy Resources. And this is actually the most important energy and industry plan in decades, describing the next chapter in the story of Norway as an energy nation. Naturally, hydrogen plays an important part in this paper, with a roadmap for hydrogen that gives directions for Norway's efforts, building on our existing technologies and competence. Our ambition is that within 10 years, hydrogen is established as a real alternative in the maritime sector, as well as being matured as an industrial alternative. And I'm so glad that Norway is not alone in having these aspirations. The Brazilian government and the Brazilian business sector should be commended for its ambitions for hydrogen. With several investments on green hydrogen already announced in the Northeast, and a national hydrogen strategy being built up by the government, Brazil is rapidly positioning itself to take advantage of its diverse and abundant resources, making a green shift where hydrogen will have an important role. I am certain that an increase of hydrogen in the energy mix will be important to reduce greenhouse emissions globally. A closer collaboration between Brazilian and Norwegian companies can accelerate our steps towards a common low-emission future and generate new and inclusive green jobs in both our countries. And as you know, Norwegian companies, research centers, and government agencies are ready and eager to collaborate with Brazilian counterparts as our nations follow the path to decarbonization. And let me take the opportunity to remind you all that the Consulate General and our government agency present here in Brazil, Innovation Norway, and Norwegian energy partners are always available to meet and discuss opportunities with Brazilian stakeholders in hydrogen and beyond. Feel free to reach out. By that, I would like to wish us all a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne and Winston, for your enlightening opening remarks. Thank you to everybody who is here following us today in this live. I truly hope that this interaction will bring and help us navigate through this evolving energy transition, where hydrogen will definitely be one of the parts of the solution in diminishing the carbon emissions. So So I have today here 5 panelists, which I am very excited to interact with. And I think that will be very interesting because we will have different perspectives coming from Europe, USA, and Brazil, and what is really being done. So what we want to have here today is really a lively interaction to see all the path, where we are in 10 years, what we will expect, and all these points that Winston enlightened us today with, which are the challenges involving cost, transportation, and how will this how we will be able to transform this into reality. So I will start presenting here. We have, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Jörg Arnes, which is a global lead for the portfolio service within DNV Energy System related to the adoption of hydrogen as an energy carrier and the development of carbon capture, transport, and storage. Tom Slocum, sorry for the pronunciation, is a regional sales manager, Western North Latin America and South Asia in Neo Hydrogen. Marcos Silva, which is a commercial director responsible for business development in Brazil and Argentina. Daniel Lopes is one of the founders of Hydron and is currently commercial director providing the development of technological solutions to meet the demands of power sector, biofuels, oil and gas, and hydrogen. And Giovanni Machado, which is director of Energy and Environment Studies in Brazil Energy Research Center, EPE, which with wide acting in several institutions in energy sector in Brazil and worldwide. So briefly explaining the dynamics, the idea here is that each panelist, and we will start with Jörg, will have 8 minutes to do its opening remarks. And I hope this is useful for everybody that is listening to us. What we try to do is get a little bit of what is happening worldwide and make this very practical and what is really happening here in Brazil and abroad. So Jörg will start and then we will be followed by Tom, then Marcos, then Daniel, then Giovanni, and 8 minutes each. And then we will start our discussion and I will do some provocative questions to help us try to navigate this universe of hydrogen. So Jörg, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rafaela, and thank you to CEBRI for inviting me for this conversation. I'm looking forward to the interesting interventions from the other speakers and to the questions from you in the audience. So I hope now that you can see my screen. I've been asked to give a perspective on how we're seeing the global hydrogen economy developing, and perhaps also take a little bit of a stock take on where we are and where we're heading. So to do this, I'll use insights from 2 of the studies that we've done. One is an opinion-based piece that we've done the 2nd year in a row, where we're asking our customers and our industry stakeholders, what is their view on the outlook for hydrogen? And I'll compare this with the results that we have from an Energization Outlook that basically provides a picture of what we see as the most likely future. And within that, we can see the role that we are envisioning that hydrogen will play. So with those introductory remarks, I can start by saying that the people that we have asked within our survey, and this is representing more than 1,000 representatives from industry across the world, largely involved in hydrogen, that they're seeing that hydrogen is really an essential part of the energy transition. And without having a significant role for hydrogen, we will not be able to meet the Paris Agreement targets. So a very clear message there from our interview respondents. Perhaps a more interesting remark is that almost half are also saying that hydrogen targets are achievable. And when they're saying this, keep in mind that the targets that are being set around the world are largely set to try to align with the Paris Agreement. There are lots of countries now that are committing to net zero targets for the country level, and the hydrogen targets are largely set to align with that. So this is, at least in my view, actually a quite positive aspect, considering that these targets are hugely ambitious. Just a few weeks ago, the UK came out with a hydrogen strategy where they're looking at having hydrogen playing or providing between 20 and 35% of the energy demand in 2050. So that's a very dramatic shift in the way that they're using energy today. But then what we're seeing in our energy transition outlook is that we're not on a path to reach the Paris Agreement targets. In fact, what we're seeing is that we'll be exhausting the 1.5 degree budget within the next decade or so. And by some 2053, we'll be also exhausting the 2 degree budget. So there is an overshoot here. And this is something to keep in mind, that if we are aiming to reach the Paris Agreement targets, we will need to change this trajectory, and we'll also need to consider a greater role for hydrogen than we are seeing in today's outlook. So before I go on, I'd like to sort of say that the 4 sort of main areas where hydrogen as an energy carrier is considered to play a role is, first of all, in the heating space for buildings. So either in space heating, water heating, or in cooking. Then you have different sectors within the within transport sector. So you can have passenger cars, heavy trucks, buses, maritime segment, and also rail. The third box here is related to the storage and use of excess electricity. And then there's been a lot of talk about using hydrogen as a battery, in the sense that you can use electricity to produce hydrogen, and then when you have too little electricity, you can actually produce electricity. But by doing that, using electricity to produce hydrogen and hydrogen to produce electricity, you're losing 2/3 of the energy input. And that electricity will not be able to compete with the electricity in the market unless you have very few hours where you'll need to have a little bit of peak shaving. So the main challenge that we're looking at is actually taking surplus electricity from renewables and being able to use that as an and provide that hydrogen as an offtake to other users. And in that sense, one of the key areas to look at is to try to mix part of the hydrogen into the natural gas grid to provide an initial market for hydrogen that can both enable greater penetration of renewables, but also enable a faster rise in demand for hydrogen, so that you can build out the production and then also have a meeting demand for that. The final area is within the heavy industries, and in that area we're seeing perhaps a little bit of a slower uptake, but certainly opportunities also in that area for hydrogen to become a decarbonization vector. So what are we seeing in our energy transition outlook? First of all, we're seeing a lower level of hydrogen than what we might want to see. In a lot of the outlooks that are looking at Paris-aligned targets, we're talking about uses of hydrogen between 15 and 20% of the energy demand. What we're seeing in our outlook is 5%. We're also seeing that the uptake is basically occurring post-2030, so we need to do something to accelerate that transition. What you're seeing here is you're seeing a broad uptake within both road, maritime, and aviation sector. Keep in mind that when it comes to both maritime and aviation, this is not really the use of pure hydrogen, but a lot of it is using synthetic fuels, or what we call hydrogen derivatives. There is a lesser role in the heating space, and then you can see that there is a bit of a degree of a role also in the industry sector. The red and the orange in this case are existing hydrogen demand. And this is actually a quite huge industry. So hydrogen today provides about 2.5% of the energy demand. So it is a very significant industry. The only caveat with that is that it's also a very polluting industry, that hydrogen production today from coal and gas provides almost a gigaton of CO2 emissions. So that's also something that we need to change. So in this webinar, I was asked to just comment on perhaps how Norway can contribute to develop a new hydrogen industry in Brazil. And for this, I think I'd like to point to 3 main areas. One of the things that Norway and Brazil shares is that we have large hydropower resources, which is perhaps the best thing you can ask for when you want to produce hydrogen. It's not an intermittent source, it's a renewable source. It provides a low carbon footprint. And by using that, you can actually produce green hydrogen in a way that is able to meet demand and limits the need for storage. So that's a key area. And we're also seeing significant investments into development of green hydrogen as a way to, let's say, take away some of the emissions from industry in this sector. Then I could also mention that Norway is one of the front runners in development of low carbon shipping. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about both battery, hydrogen, and ammonia. So for batteries, we have some 70 or so battery ferries in Norway. We're starting to develop a hydrogen ferry. There will be one that is operational next year, another one to be operational in 2024. So these are early movements that can also be transferred to Brazil. In the ammonia sector, we're also pioneering the use of ammonia as a fuel for ships. And the DNV has indeed also developed rules for using ammonia on ships. The final point, I think, is in the area of CCS. Norway has been a front runner in this as well. We have had operational CCS projects since 1996. And in the development of blue hydrogen, CCS is a core component. So to be able to produce hydrogen at large scale and to get that ball rolling, we will need to have a mix of both blue and green hydrogen. And also, if you would like to transport hydrogen or export that to other regions, you might need to look into opportunities for exporting that in the form of ammonia, and therefore also in the production of blue ammonia. So at least from my perspective, I see these as three key areas of collaboration: the production of green hydrogen from hydropower resources, the use of hydrogen and ammonia in shipping, and the later area of the development of CCS opportunities. So with that, I think I'll just close with this slide. In order to understand the competitiveness of hydrogen value chains, you need to understand the full value chain. It's not enough to look at the competitiveness of the production. You need to understand how it's transported, stored, and delivered to the end user. And these are areas that DNV play in along the full value chain. And we are providing strategy support in the way that, for instance, we did for the Norwegian government, where we developed the knowledge basis for the Norwegian national strategy. So with that, I think I'll leave the floor to the next speaker, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Great insight, Jord. So we will pass it to Tom. And
okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen.
there we go.
Can you see the full screen?
Not yet.
And now?
Now, yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction, Rafaela. My name is Tom Scotchless. I'm a regional sales manager for Nel Hydrogen. And I was asked to discuss existing and present technical challenges and economics of green hydrogen, and as well as our focus on global projects and actions involving green hydrogen. So with that, just to give you a top overview on who Nel is. Nel is a 100% pure play hydrogen company. We have over 500 people scattered throughout 4 manufacturing facilities for PEM electrolyzers in the United States, having delivered almost 3,000 systems worldwide. Present production capacity of 50 megawatts per year and expandable to 100 and beyond. And then we have our 2 facilities in Norway, having delivered already over 800 systems worldwide, and current capacity of 40 megawatts per year, and in the Taden facility, and then the new facility just commissioned last year, having 500 megawatt capacity per year and expandable to 2 gigawatt. And then we have our hydrogen fueling station manufacturing facility, which is an important component in the green hydrogen for mobility sector, having already delivered over 300 stations and 115 stations and a capacity to build 300 stations per year. Nel's been in business for over 90 years and currently traded on the Oslo Stock Exchange with between a $2 and $3 billion market cap. So just with a little intro on Nell's capabilities, we do develop and produce 2 different types of electrolyzers that fit different market needs in different regions. The atmospheric alkaline technology has been serving the market for traditional medium to large scale chemical industry since 1927. And we use the word chemical industry, you think of that as not environmentally friendly, but in fact, much of those plants early on were actually green because they were getting their electricity from hydroelectricity. So this is a technology that is basically suitable for steady state operation, large scale chemical kind of steady state operations like ammonia production, methanol production, or float glass and other traditionally carbon heavy industrial applications, but the ability to decarbonize them with renewable energy as the feed, it makes it very suitable for the transition of industrial applications. And then we also are developers and manufacturers of the proton exchange membrane type of technology, which is quite different. It's historically been suitable for small scale dynamic operation for manufacturing of industry, as well as later on for energy transition for capturing intermittency of renewables to store that energy as hydrogen. PEM technology is uniquely suitable for integration to wind and solar because it has been demonstrated to be able to receive the variable power from intermittent resources at the same rate of change as battery technologies. So the PEM technology is uniquely suitable to enable the capture of renewables from solar and wind, as well as hydro, of course, but it makes enabling that transition of renewable energy to decarbonize industry and transportation, or the energy transition in general, much more obtainable. So with these 2 technologies, Nel Hydrogen has a very broad array of product offerings, totaling over 3,500 systems today worldwide in 80 countries. We have very small systems, relatively speaking, that are standardized manufactured products. You know, you can these here on the left, you can think of these as industrial appliances, not much different of an installation process for installing an air compressor, if you will. These are completely autonomous machines, these small scale generators, and we have a number of pilot scale projects over the last 15 years in Europe and US for a demonstration of green hydrogen production from renewables. And we have our medium scale, 1 to 2 megawatt scale for most recent interest in these is, of course, since 2020, the pilot scale demonstration projects for the energy transition of converting the green electricity from PV and wind to hydrogen for injection into the different industrial sectors that Jorg mentioned, for ammonia or methanol as an energy carrier, and or very big recent interest is in conventional industrial applications that are wanting to decarbonize their process. It is choosing, instead of getting their hydrogen derived from fossil origins such as coal gasification and steam methane reforming, to install these at the points of use in industrial process to produce green hydrogen and displace their dependency on carbon. And what we're all interested in is this energy transition that is really going to help decarbonize the global energy dependency on fossil fuels. And this is where the technical challenges are at our forefront, is how do we scale up electrolyzer technologies in the 50, 100, and gigawatt of scale and beyond to really reduce our dependency on coal, gas, and oil. So it's important to know that green hydrogen, in fact, is not a new phenomenon. It is been in practice for many years, and as Jorg mentioned, there's certain geographies where basically the cost of green hydrogen is proportional to the cost of electricity. And like in Norway, there's lots of green electricity available as well as in Brazil. So it makes these particular regions and others like it early adopters for decarbonizing the hydrogen production that could be used into decarbonizing the industry. This is one site example, in fact, operating since 2013. It is 100% green because it's getting its electricity from hydroelectricity. So in fact, if this particular manufacturing plant had chosen fossil-based hydrogen production, it would have been emitting 115 tons of CO2 per day. And so since 2013, it's been offsetting that CO2 emission. So the good news is that this development of decarbonized or green hydrogen production is already a proven technology. And it's the major technical challenge really is ramping up production capabilities to meet the near-term and long-term demand for electrolyzers, as well as ramping up individual plant sizes. So with that, NEL is of course involved in a number of decarbonizing efforts in different industrial sectors. We are involved in decarbonizing certain components of the steel manufacturing process. In fact, we've recently delivered there was recently delivered a carbon-free steel to Volvo for manufacturing of their transportation equipment. And this is something that's being looked at very closely worldwide for, reducing the dependency on fossil-based fuels for thermal processing in steel mills worldwide. Of course, the mining industry contributes to a very significant percentage of greenhouse gas emissions or carbon CO2 emissions. And we are involved in pilot projects in the mining industry also to reduce their dependency on diesel for their heavy surface equipment in an effort to decarbonize the mining industry, as well as the mobility sector, the traditional mobility sector that we're all familiar with: cars, trains, trucks, and buses. Here's a project underway for Sunline Transit in California, where they are fueling actually a fleet of 26 buses that the public rides on in Palm Springs, California, a 2-megawatt scale project. And we have this other project here in Switzerland. It's part of a major project for decarbonizing the logistics industry in Switzerland of transporting cargo and goods throughout the country of Switzerland, where there's a number of hydroelectric dams throughout the country. Will be co-locating the electrolyzer plants with those hydroelectric plants. In certainly some recent developments where we are spearheading activities into decarbonizing industrial and larger scale 20-megawatt kind of scale projects. Recently announced is a green fertilizer project in Spain with Iberdrola. That plant is under construction today. And even just a few days ago, a new project in Scotland for heating and cooking in homes. This plant is sized to be able to provide heating and cooking for 300 to 900 homes. And this work is going to be commencing very soon. And certainly the technical challenges is more to do with the economics of electrolyzers in the industry. You have two factors that are, speed bumps to the transition. One, of course, is CapEx for electrolyzers, and then, of course, the other is OpEx. And certainly, the technology to develop and manufacture electrolyzers exists for many years, but the demand for large-scale electrolyzers was never a requirement. So therefore, for large-scale electrolyzers, the CapEx can be, of course, significant. And what we are seeing is a downward trend in the cost of CapEx of electrolyzers because of two things. The market demand requiring or driving for more and more manufacturing production, which will modernize and scale up manufacturing facilities to support the near demand, and of course, technological developments and advancements in the electrolyzer technology itself, and the manufacturing techniques as well. So here on the left side of my screen, you can see a downward trend in CapEx for alkaline technology, as well as PEM technology. The decrease of each curve is a little bit different because alkaline technology is more mature, and a lot of the contributing developments to cost reduction is more to do with scale up of manufacturing. And with the PEM technology, a lot of the development is a combination of scale up of manufacturing and capacity of electrolyzer sizes, as well as technological advancements. But we anticipate by the end of the decade and beyond, certainly by 2050, that the CapEx of both technologies will become approaching an attractive price of $300 per kilowatt. And then, of course, the other side of the equation is the OpEx. Certainly in a majority of the world where the electricity prices are still quite high, the converting that electricity to hydrogen may still not compete with hydrogen produced by fossil fuels, but in certain regions, as already been demonstrated, or where there's curtailment of renewables because solar or wind might be producing electricity when the grid doesn't demand it, that electricity can sometimes be at a very attractive price, making green hydrogen competitive with gray hydrogen. So in regions that are affluent with renewable resources, whether it be hydro, wind, or solar, the electricity price could sustain in the near term green hydrogen to outcompete gray, and certainly in the long term, it's forecasted to certainly outcompete gray hydrogen, by 2050 or so. So around $20 per megawatt hour of electricity in many parts of the world, hydrogen produced by green methods will be cost competitive against hydrogen produced with gray methods. So that's really quick top level view. I hope it answers or provides some good information. And with that, we can move on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Tom. A very interesting, enlightening information. Yes, and I will explore this when we start talking about the costs and how is NEO really forecasting this coming to lower prices and being competitive in the long run. So thank you very much. Then we will start with Marcus now to have also his perspectives on its projects conducted by Air Products. Please, Marcus.
Okay. No, thank you, Rafaela, and I would like to congratulate the CEBRI for such a great initiative. Well, a little bit about Air Products. We've been in the market for 80 years now, with 2020 sales in the range of $9 billion, operations in more than 50 countries, and also over 750 facilities around the world. In talking a little bit about Air Products' experience in hydrogen, we have been designing, building, and operating steam methane reformers for over 35 years now. Air Products has over 40% market share of the hydrogen market, the gray and blue hydrogen market, mainly for refineries. And we have been operating the largest carbon sequestration and utilization project since 2012. Also, we run a lot of hydrogen pipelines, over 1,500 kilometers of hydrogen pipelines with more than 90 contracts around the road. And going to green hydrogen and how we are paving the road for green hydrogen, we have signed strategic cooperation agreements for road-scale electrolysis, ammonia synthesis, and cracking plants to generate green hydrogen, convert it into a carrier, and crack it back at the destination. And the most emblematic project so far is NEOM, that we announced, is a project with AQUI Power in Saudi Arabia. We are talking about investing $5 billion in a production facility powered by renewable energy. And we are going to produce up to 650 tons per day of green hydrogen and export it to different parts of the world. And a little bit about the concept of a green hydrogen project as we envision them. First, we have the upstream side, and we are talking about using desalinated or waste water, mainly because we see fresh water as a very important commodity in the near future, and there's going to be a lot of conflict around the use of fresh water. So we want to stay clear of this type of conflict. So that's why we are targeting desalinated water and wastewater as the source for water for the electrolysis. And another point is we are looking at hybrid wind, solar, and hydro power, because we clearly see that in order to run the electrolyzers 24/7, we cannot rely on a single source of power, of renewable power, because most of them are intermittent, so we need to complement them. So a conceptual upstream facility, just like the one we are going to build in NEOM, is consisted of a set of electrolyzers that can be scaled up, as the previous presenters demonstrated. And we are thinking about also using the green oxygen as well as the green hydrogen. So, and in terms of concept, we envision that these facilities are going to be located in industrial complex where we could utilize locally part of the hydrogen and part of the oxygen. So the oxygen can be distributed through pipelines for water treatment applications, green steel applications. The hydrogen is also going to be required by the green steel industry, or conventional steel industries willing to convert their production into green steel. Other industries that can also benefit from hydrogen, mobility as well. So we envision these complexes to be located close to big cities where transportation buses can benefit from having this source of hydrogen in the neighborhood. And we are thinking about distributing both the oxygen and the hydrogen through pipelines, and part of them through pipelines. And part of this green hydrogen is going to be converted, and we are seeing that ammonia, up to now, is the main carrier, or the best candidate for a carrier, for a hydrogen carrier. So we also need an air separation unit to get nitrogen and use this nitrogen to convert the green hydrogen into ammonia. We are going to have some storage, ammonia storage on this site. And part of this ammonia is going to be exported through trains to mining applications, mainly. The projects that we are developing, or the opportunities that we are developing, are mainly focusing on mining applications and these industries that I mentioned here. And part of this green ammonia is going to be transported through ships, cabotage or international routes to applications downstream. So, and at the port of destination, this ammonia is going to be stored and then dissociated so that it can become hydrogen molecules again, and distributed mainly through pipelines. And in terms of the green hydrogen market in Brazil, we estimate that before 2040, this market is going to be in the range of $15 to $20 billion per year. And we also see that we have an opportunity to export between $3 to $5 billion per year. And in terms of where we think that these projects may be best located, we are mainly looking at the northeast of Brazil, although we are also looking at interesting opportunities in Rio de Janeiro and Espírito Santo. But we see 3 states in Brazil, Ceará, Rio Grande do Norte, and Maranhão, as the possible best candidates to host a green hydrogen project, as the one I depicted in the slide before. And this green hydrogen can be produced, let's say, in the state of Ceará, and through cabotage, it can go to the states of Espírito Santo and Rio de Janeiro, and through a rail to the state of Minas Gerais. So Espírito Santo, Rio de Janeiro, and Minas Gerais are states in the southeast of Brazil where the steel industry is a very important one. And also through cabotage, it can go to Maranhão, and through rail, it can go to the state of Pará, where there are some important mining applications. And well, one thing is that the northeast of Brazil is not too far away from a port like Rotterdam. So we are talking about 8.5, 9 days of distance from the port of Pecém, for instance, in the state of Ceará, to Rotterdam. And if you think about cabotage, we are talking about 2 to 3 days to different ports in Espírito Santo and Rio de Janeiro. And why are we looking at the northeast of Brazil as a main candidate to host such a project? Well, the first point is that in the northeast of Brazil, we have frequent and intense night winds, which allow a hybrid generation with solar panels. And also we can have some hydropower. We can import some hydropower and have a flat or almost flat power generation, which optimizes large-scale electrolysis. We also have a well-developed system of tax incentives, mainly in the state of Ceará. And the state of Ceará, one of these tax incentives, which are very interesting for us, is that they are exempting companies from paying the VAT, which here in Brazil we call ICMS, for all the power that, all the renewable power that we import through the grid to the state of Ceará in order to produce green hydrogen. So this is a tremendous incentive because it allows us to import the hydropower to supplement solar and wind power and have this 24/7 renewable power generation and optimize the electrolysis. Also, there are industrial complexes such as Pecém, where green hydrogen and oxygen out of the electrolysis have a market, so we can distribute part of this green hydrogen and green oxygen through pipelines to a local market. We think that we need to foster and to look for customers in the local market. We cannot depend entirely on exports. Also, there are major railway integrated to iron ore and grains export-import, and we are talking mainly about the port of Itaqui in Maranhão, which would allow us to transport ammonia by rail to the countryside of the country and also to major mines in the state of Pará. Also, there are natural hydrogen seeps that were found in Ceará and can also be exported through conversion to ammonia. And as I mentioned, Europe is 8 to 9 days away by ship. And finally, we also see the importance of what we call an ecosystem And why we see that an ecosystem is important. Well, the conversion into a green economy we see as a huge endeavor, and not a single government or company will succeed if it tries to carry out this conversion alone. The main reasons being the large sums of capital that will be required. Also, no single company retains all the knowledge to close the technology gaps, so partnerships are key. And also, we think that governments at all levels, the municipal level, the state level, federal level, need to promote this conversion with regulation and incentives until all these technologies that I mentioned achieve maturity. So that's why we also look for this ecosystem so that we can properly develop the green hydrogen economy. Well, with this said, I stop my presentation and I pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much. That's very enlightening as well, and the connections already with Brazil and things that are starting to happen. And with that, it's going to be great to hear from Daniel, who has been active here in the Northeast, exactly in the PECEM and other, to share a bit of what's already happening in Brazil and this perspective. So Daniel, please. For yours.
Thank you, Rafaela. Thank you, CEBRI, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all. So I will share my screen now and present to you some of our solutions and projects. So, Hydron is a Brazilian company focus in solutions for hydrogen production and purification. We already have something like 18 years, and the history of Hydron was founded as a spin-off of the hydrogen laboratory in University of Campinas in São Paulo. I am Daniel Lopes, and I am one of co-founders of Hydron. Nowadays, Hydron is part of Neumann & Esser Group, is a German company with almost 200 years. And we have the Neumann & Esser Group is a leader in to supply the compressors, gas compressors and hydrogen compressors around the world. So together with Hydron, NEA is part of all the value chain of hydrogen, including the hydrogen generation, the compressors, the storage, and the supplying all the infrastructure to the final use. We are 28 companies around the world, and we have facilities in 10 strategic countries. We are talking about something like 1,000 to 2,000 of employees around the world. And here in Brazil, we have 2 facilities, Hydron in São Paulo and Neumann & Esser Brazil, NEA Brazil, in Belo Horizonte. And together, we are the Excellence Center for Hydrogen Production inside the NEA group around the world. That's very important to show you this because we are talking about Brazilian technologies using the right environment to Brazilian opportunities. Here I have for one picture where we can show you all the value chain of hydrogen and where Neumann & Esser Group is inside. First of all, we have a company called Arcano that provides technology to produce biogas and biomethane from waste. And this biomethane can be compressed for the use, industrial use, or for hydrogen production, green hydrogen production in Hydron's equipments. When we are talking about the hydrogen production and the hydrogen technologies, we are talking about the production of hydrogen from electrolyzers, and we have both main technologies, the PEM electrolyzer and the alkaline electrolyzers. But hydrogen has two reformers, and we work with our own technology, producing green hydrogen from biomethane and from ethanol too. When the equipment, the hydrogen equipment produce the hydrogen, we can provide the right pressure to use this hydrogen in logistics or in storage, and either for mobility and other applications. And when the client needs, we can provide the conversion of hydrogen electricity too. So as we can see here, we have technology and solutions for all the value chain of hydrogen. And talking about the hydrogen technologies, here I will show you some of our equipment for production of hydrogen from electrolysis. In this picture, we have one of equipment of hydrogen equipment producing green hydrogen from wind and solar farm and hydroelectricity here. We are talking about a project, the CESP project, the state of São Paulo company, and nowadays is Votorantim Energy company. Here we are producing hydrogen, storing this hydrogen to reconvert this hydrogen in electricity. But hydrogen have all this kind of solution to provide green hydrogen from electrolyzers. When we are talking about the small scale, we are talking about to start the production of hydrogen from 10 normal cubic meters per hour, providing this hydrogen up to 40 bar. And we have the industry equipment or energy equipment that we are talking about producing in a modular way up to 1,000 of normal cubic meter of hydrogen per hour in a 5 megawatt plants. So with this kind of equipment here, we are offering our multi-megawatt solutions in plants with 100 megawatt or 200 megawatts. And here I have the pleasure to announce to you, as Marco told us about this, the state of Ceará is one of the most important state in Brazil, or the state that is been the pioneer in the hydrogen market. And the very first plant, a megawatt plant in the state of Ceará, is a project with ADP, Energias de Portugal, and the technology awarded was the hydrogen technology. So we are talking about here to start all of this environment that we are talking about when we are thinking about the opportunities here in Brazil. So we are supplying 250 normal cubic meters of hydrogen per hour equipment in a 1.3 megawatt electrolyzer. But we have here our own, I will not show you in a very deep way, but here we have the concept of our 5 megawatt plant. And when we can see here all the balance of plant and all of the equipment together. So with this kind of arrange, we are talking about 1,000 production of hydrogen per hour. But Hydro is involved in other projects that use this green hydrogen to produce other fuels, called the synthetic fuels. In this case, we are talking about other projects, in this case with Repsol Sinopec Brazil, when we are producing hydrogen, green hydrogen from renewables using the PEM technologies from hydrogen. the concept to capture CO2 and convert the CO2 in CO, and using a Fischer-Tropsch process to produce green fuels. In this case, we are starting producing the green diesel, the e-diesel, but this project is meant to produce jet A1 too. So here again, we are talking about projects in Brazil and with Brazilian engineering and equipments. But as I told you, we don't have only the electrolyzers solutions. Hydrogen has to the hydrogen production, the renewable hydrogen production from ethanol and biomethane, or the gray or blue production of hydrogen from methane. In this picture, I can show you our modular concept to produce hydrogen from biomethane. That is the necessity of this insumes to produce this green hydrogen. We are talking about to use 4.8 normal cubic meters of biomethane to produce a kilogram of hydrogen, water, and electricity. In this case, we are talking about 10 times or 12 times less energy that we can we need to use for the hydrogen production in electrolyzers, because the most important energy is provided by the biofuel. In this case, we can produce either very high purity hydrogen. We are talking about a 6.9 of purity to attend the mobility and the use in a fuel cells, in a PEM fuel cells. Our equipment are modular in this case too, and the technology is turnkey and very, very autonomous technology integrated with control and automation process of our clients. In this case, I am showing to you the ethanol, the use of ethanol, the biofuel, the liquid biofuel to produce green hydrogen. In this case, we are talking about 7.6 liters of ethanol to produce a kilogram of hydrogen. And in this case, we are talking about the production of high purity hydrogen, 10 bar of pressures. So we talked in this panel here about the logistic, how we can use the good logistic to transport the hydrogen. So in this case, I want to talk a little bit about this with you, because here in Brazil, we have the opportunity to use the ethanol as a green hydrogen carrier. So in the hydrogen concepts, we can do this. We can use all the transportation and logistic established here in Brazil to transport the ethanol and produce hydrogen locally without intermittence. So the ethanol is one fact. The ethanol is a renewable fuel, easy to transportation, usual for Brazilian case. Brazil is a very important global player in supplying this biofuel, and we have all the value chain established here in Brazil. The ethanol is not a toxic fuel and is stable, and enables the flat production of green hydrogen. So in a hydrogen concept, other way to think about the arrange is a system using green hydrogen production from electrolysis and the green hydrogen production using this kind of biofuel, biomethane and ethanol. Why biomethane and ethanol? Because they are certified fuels and very standardized fuels, so we can work with this kind of fuel to produce this kind of hydrogen. So in our point of view, and because of that, we already have this kind of technology too, we can use this very easy green hydrogen carrier. So, beside of this, we already have all the solutions to, as I told you, and we are talking about the mobility, for example, or the industrial case. We have the hydrogen production and the green hydrogen production, our technologies to produce the FEOs, and our technologies to compress this hydrogen for all the use the client needs, and either to provide the right storage to do this. So with this word, I can again congratulate CEBRI for the panel, and I am here to answer your question and to talk a little bit more about this amount of opportunities in the hydrogen market. Thank you again, Rafaela.
Thank you, Daniel. Very interesting insights, and which will leave a special last but not least spot for Giovanni before we have our round of questions, because you brought here a perspective of hydrogen that can come from biomethane, from biogas, from ethanol, and still be green. And then I will leave Giovanni to bring his first words. And it's interesting to see that Brazil, you have a diverse opportunities of becoming greener and greener. So please, Giovanni, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rafaela. Hello, everyone. Well, first, I would like to thank, while I'm sharing my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, but it's still not
okay.
in the, no, it is.
Okay. First, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting EPE to give this talk on behalf of the Brazilian government. Particularly, I congratulate CEBRI for organizing this event, and CEBRI and the Norwegian consulate are very important partners of EPE. I also congratulate the Council, Ms. Marianne Fosland from Norway, and also Wilson and Rafaela and all my colleagues from the panel. Actually, my presentation was made very much easier by the previous speakers. So I will focus on some aspects. Of course, hydrogen is not a new market. There is a market already, but it's concentrated on raw materials. So for industrial process, such as fertilizers, refineries, methanol, mining and metallurgies, foods and others, and there is also new perspectives in the market related to the energy storage, to fuel cell, for both for appliances like forklift and transportation, but also for sustainable fuel for aviation, and advanced biofuels produced in biorefineries, not only biojet, but also HVO and biobunker and some other kind of advanced biofuels. Some of them has demand hydrogen as input for the production. For instance, if you have biojet from HEFA process, you need to hydrotreat the vegetable oil. So there is both a domestic market already in Brazil and a huge potential for developed market in the future. If we take, for instance, the percentage of carbon emission in Brazil for 2030, roughly 65% of the carbon emission of the Brazilian energy sector will be in the so-called hard-to-abate industries. So that's why hydrogen and also ammonia will be very important to help to decarbonize the already very low carbon Brazilian economy. It's important to call the attention to bear in mind that Brazil has both global players and suppliers and local players, suppliers, just as Hydro just made a presentation, my friend Daniel, that it's a success case in Brazil. The government has support hydrogen for a long time in Brazil. There is a long-term commitment to hydrogen that has already brought some results. So there are a lot of programs, plans, white papers, and recently the energy policy, the National Energy Policy Council resolutions to support and to foster the hydrogen industry in Brazil. Those efforts helped to build capacity in human capital in Brazil. So there's a lot of institutions involved with research and technological development on the value chain of hydrogen in Brazil. If you take the amount of money invested by public and public-oriented investments in R&D and innovation in Brazil, it might not be so important when you take other countries, but it's already 1% of the energy R&D and innovation in Brazil in the past. And it's important to bear in mind that the CNP resolution number 2 provide guidelines to orient those funds to allocate resources in priority areas. One of them hydrogen, other of them related somehow to hydrogen as well. But I think one of the most important results from those long-term commitments to hydrogen were the development of startups in Brazil. Hydro is probably one of most important success cases in Brazil, but there's also other ones that have been participated in the local supplier chain in Brazil. Recently, we identified the needs such as worldwide to further develop the market design and the policy for hydrogen in Brazil. And that brings us to another CNPE resolution, the number 6 last April, that requested that the Minister of Mines and Energy to propose directives on the national hydrogen program in collaboration with the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation and Ministry of Regional Development with the technical support of EPE. Basically, we tried to cover the whole range of issues to develop a market in the program, in the national hydrogen program. It ranged from strengthening technological basis to training and capacity building, trying to enhance the human capital in the value chain of hydrogen in Brazil. We also focus in energy planning on how on estimate the market and the market potential. We are doing this currently. Also to identify the gaps and the need for improvements in legal and regulation framework and regulatory framework, and also to try to provide the business environment, the appropriate business environment to promote the market growth and the competitiveness of hydrogen and derivatives in Brazil. And last but not least, to develop a whole and broad network of international cooperation and partnership. And that's why Norway is also a very important partner to Brazil. We have been talking and established international partners with several countries, Germany, UK, some BRICS, also some multilateral institutions like the Hydrogen Initiative from the Clean Energy Ministerial, some collaborations with India as well, and we have already had some talks with Norway and US. So the idea of the program is to mobilize the public and the private sector as well as the academia together with international cooperation. To wrap up everything I said, we have in mind that Brazil has the potential to be a key player in the international hydrogen market, because first it has a huge natural endowment for different routes and sources to produce hydrogen. There is government commitment for a long time, sound regulation business environment in energy sector, fair human capital, technological skills, and logistics to key international markets. And more important, we are trying to have a kind of progressive approach when we try to get the benefits from the national competitive advantage while we create new ones. So although for the long term, renewables are blue chip in the hydrogen market, we still see important role for natural gas and nuclear, mainly if you can deliver low carbon hydrogen, because the world will need, as my as the previous speaker showed, hydrogen, particularly to the hard to abate sectors. And so we have a kind of technological neutrality rather than a lock-in approach, and this wide international partnership focus. So that's what I have to say today. I'm open to the question afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. Very interesting perspectives, and we see all the opportunities that we have here in Brazil and the importance of partnering and having different countries working together to make hydrogen one important source. Since we are running out of time, what I will do is we have received many questions here coming from the audience, and I will try to blend them with the ones that I already have. And so I will start with the one I received with Jörg. And specifically, I liked I saw on when you were presenting that you were saying that from the visions you have today, you expect 5% of global energy demand coming from hydrogen in the long run. And so, and that the uses, besides heating, you have the heavy industries and also the maritime for transportation. So what are your perspectives for hydrogen to be a relevant source of emission reduction in maritime transportation? And I also received here, and I will blend this with the one that I had, is from Tullio Cipoletti, that asks what can be done to overcome the limitations to transport and stock hydrogen in the existing facilities.
Okay, so thank you for that question. No, it's very true that hydrogen is being considered as a key potential fuel for maritime and shipping. I think in our outlook as well, you could see a quite sort of significant fraction of that graph indicating the uses within the maritime sector. One thing to note is that it didn't really start to scale until almost the 2040s, so it comes quite late. What we're seeing in terms of development right now is that sort of battery type ferries is covering the very short distances that we have in Norway, and then that these sort of hydrogen becomes a solution for, let's say, a little bit longer ferries or batteries are not meeting the energy requirements for those. When it comes to deep sea shipping and long distance shipping, there is limitations to the distance and that the hydrogen can carry just because of the space requirements on board the ships, etc. So we see that ammonia will become a more relevant alternative for deep sea shipping. And in terms of the fraction that we're seeing, that ammonia is playing a very significant component there. So I think that's the sort of the broader trend that we're seeing, and we are already seeing that ammonia as a fuel for shipping will become commercial in 2023, 2024, and the first ships are in the process of being built. The second thing I think you talked about was the use of hydrogen being stored or transported in existing facilities. So that's a quite broad question, but I think certainly there's a possibility of reusing existing infrastructure for transporting hydrogen. In fact, in terms of using existing pipelines, for instance, the cost of repurposing a pipeline for hydrogen transport may be 10 to 35% of the cost of building a new pipeline. There are certain limitations to that infrastructure, so you typically need to go down in pressure a little bit, and there's also components such as compressors and others that might need to be replaced, but there's opportunities to do that. And if you break it all down into the different types of systems, you might have subsurface storage, you might have tanks. You really need to look at each of those components from a system perspective. It will be the, let's say, the least or the most vulnerable point that is sort of dictating it. So then you need to make some changes there. But all in all, it's possible to reuse existing facilities for hydrogen. For instance, for subsurface storage, salt caverns that are used today for natural gas storage can also be used for hydrogen. And there's also other opportunities for reusing facilities. So that's an important and interesting space to watch.
Thank you, Jörg, very much for your answers. A big way to go, but it's been nice to learn that there's a lot of involvements. Thank you so much. So Tom, the next question is for you, and we saw in your presentation, of course, nowadays the gray hydrogen, it is, in terms of price, it's much more competitive than the green hydrogen. And then you showed a lot of pilots that Neil has been doing all over the world, and making it starting to make the reality of green hydrogen evolving. Do you see, are there rewards in this market for buying this green hydrogen? What I mean is, how do you see the market for green hydrogen evolving in terms of cost and its competitiveness? do you see that clients will be willing to pay like a premium for it being green, or it's going to buy it per se, be more competitive?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Rafaela. And there's lots of dynamic influences that customers or clients decide on whether to pay a premium for green hydrogen or not. And a lot of the factors we are seeing is not only the basic finances, the cost of energy to produce the green hydrogen and whether or not it's competitive against gray or not, but we're seeing lots of pull from the market from large scale companies who want to differentiate themselves from their competitors and being able to demonstrate that their products have a smaller carbon footprint than the next person's or next company. So there's a tremendous amount of interest there trying to strategize whether or not how much higher of a premium they're willing to pay for that differentiation. And then you have other factors associated with other influences such as government subsidies or credits for companies or clients being able to demonstrate carbon reduction, or a reduction of carbon emissions could be a benefit as well. So some of those are the other influencers to companies evaluating this, aside from the simple finances of gray versus green and the cost per kilogram of hydrogen.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, one of the things I have been reading is exactly this premium and this differentiation as you have lower emissions. So thanks a lot for your explanations. The next question to Daniel, to Marcus. And we saw here, Marcus, in your presentation as well, many examples of how Air Products is tackling the green and also the blue hydrogen, and in a lot of different promising applications. Do you see, two questions, one from me and one from the others. So for me, how do you see the market for blue hydrogen evolving here in Brazil and abroad? Since blue, if you capture the carbon, it is also clean and evolving towards a low carbon environment. And do you see hydrogen used for aviation? This came from Ana Paula. I'll get her surname, but she's in the audience. So Ana Paula Cavalcante.
All right. Well, thank you for the questions. Well, on your first question, Rafaela, we see that there is going to be a transition, because one cannot switch from one day to the other from the current energy sources that we have, which are highly intensive in carbon emissions, to a totally green source of energy. We would require a massive amount of resources to do this conversion so fast. So all the carbon capture technologies will have a very important role to play in this transition. And I think that in the near term, and I'm talking about the next 5 to 10 years, these technologies are key to decarbonize the economy, to decarbonize the energy production sector. So, and we can not only store these carbon that we are capturing, but we can also utilize. So there are some chemical reactions that can convert the CO2 into some other product. And among them, methanol and a lot of other products that can be converted from using this CO2 that we convert. And there are also technologies that we are deploying. And one of the most emblematic projects in this way is the Port Arthur carbon capture project that we have in Texas. We are capturing like 1 million tons per year of CO2 and storing part of this CO2 in old oil wells that exist in the region. So when they are captured and stored there forever, of course, there are a part of it that is released, but it's a very important step between now and the future in 2040, 2050, when we should have a higher degree of our economies converted to green sources of energy. On the second question, yes, hydrogen is an interesting source of energy to aviation, mainly through the utilization of fuel cells that are just like batteries, but you use hydrogen in these so-called batteries, the fuel cells, and it provides a better range for the airplanes than a typical electrical battery that you need to recharge from time to time. So in this respect, yes, hydrogen is a very interesting energy solution for aviation.
Thank you, Marcos.
My pleasure.
Now following to Daniel, we have, and again, blending mine with the audiences here, William Borger and Luiz Antônio Costa de Arruda Melo. They were anxious to know, and I think this is a question that many people have, is how can, considering that here we have a lot of alternatives, and you showed a lot of things that are happening in Ceará and especially Pecém, how can companies certify Brazilian green hydrogen? Can't we use a green PPA to certify the green hydrogen generated on the ports as green? And
perfect,
so yes, this was one of, and then mine would be, because Hydron is also is always a dear example for us of a company that is Brazilian and is evolving as well. And so what are you seeing in terms of fomenting the technological developments here in Brazil? So these are the
perfect. Perfect. Thank you for the questions, very intelligent questions. Yes, that's a very important, how to certify this green hydrogen. That's, I think, is the most important answer nowadays we have, because here in Brazil, we have all the conditions to produce as green as possible this hydrogen around the world. So, and besides of that, we need to think how to transport this hydrogen green way too, because if we can produce this hydrogen from renewable resource, but we need to think all of the logistics. Isn't it the easy question? But the way Hydron understand that it's possible to do this is mixing our source, our green source, to produce this hydrogen. So in the case of Pecém, we are talking about to create a new infrastructure to from wind or solar to produce this green hydrogen from this kind of intermittent resource. But here we have a problem, because this kind of source are intermittent. So when we are talking about the solar, we are talking about the use to produce this hydrogen only from the day. So we needed to take the advantage of our matrix, energetic matrix here in Brazil is almost 80% renewable. Mm-hmm. And we need to think in how to utilize the renewable source locally. So I think that is the most important point, because we need to think, when we are talking about Brazil, we need to think in how to promote a local increase of economy. We already have a very important team of engineers here in Brazil. So we need to think all of this condition using the domestic market, the Brazilian market, and all the sources we have to produce this green hydrogen. But we already have some programs here in Brazil as RenovaBio that certify all the value chain for biofuels production, and we need to take this advantage of this knowledge to certify the green hydrogen too. So I think the important points to highlight: the quality of our source, the renewable source, as Giovanni told us, the quality of our national engineering and technologies, and bring the opportunities to high added value for our country using the hydrogen market too. I think that's all of the important points we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Very, very interesting. It's the certification, and then afterwards being also able to have a green premium or have a premium in terms of the energy we are selling. So that's great. Giovanni, last one for you, and I will also blend. You presented the CNPE resolution in April, and also brought all the things that EPE is already thinking about in terms of technological basis, capacity building, energy planning, the market growth and competitiveness, international corporations. So everything that really needs to come in place. And then Ademar, I'll put the audience first. So Ademar Freire asks, is there any ongoing plan to develop the Brazilian roadmap for hydrogen? And I will add mine, which is, do you see hydrogen, since we have so many sources of renewable energies available in Brazil, do you see hydrogen as a competitive source of energy here in Brazil and abroad in terms of exporting this form of energy? So please.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Well, first, try to answer Ademar from the audience. Well, we released the document recently in August, and we still having a lot of work in detailing each axis through several, with having several conversations and meetings with the stakeholders, try to figure out all the pieces that we need to put together to design the market and to make it happen. Particularly regarding roadmap, hydrogen roadmap, yes, we have this in our schedule to do, but we have several previous steps to do before it. For instance, under the PNA2, we are discussing the governance of the Brazilian government. It's not only EPE, it's the whole Brazilian government involved with that. So there is different competences in different governmental bodies. So we need to put all people together, and also subnational entities and private sector to talk and to build all the bases, the foundations to have a sound market in the future. With that, I think I can move to your question about the perspective of competitiveness of Brazil. Of course, as my colleagues said, there is some challenges regarding to the competitiveness of low carbon hydrogen currently, but all of that has been are being addressed not only in Brazil but worldwide. One thing we need to think that it's the carbon market structure and how to pricing carbon will help to develop this market along the coming years. This is one thing. So you need to look at the cost of low carbon, but also to to the extra price or extra costs related to carbon price that will be have to be paid by gray hydrogen in the future. But this will not be like a 100 meters running. This will be a marathon. So it's important to have this in mind. So we need to construct, to build all the steps and put all the pieces together to make it work. Of course, Brazil is very competitive in renewables and has developed, discovered some very important natural gas resources. So we have to take advantage to that. And as we see, we can see a twofold strategy to Brazil. We can put together both the kind of strategy usually called export to let it grow, but also grow to export. So both of them are related to getting scale. And since Brazil is a large country, there is, and with potential pulverized, spread out all over the territory, there will be several business opportunities close to the market. And this is very important because sometimes people put too much attention only on having like a centralized infrastructure, and this will add a lot of costs and require a lot of investment at the beginning. And you could combine both centralized infrastructure development, but also decentralized production and use, as the previous speakers show some cases like that. So if you look at the market as a whole, you can find your business model, your niche of market to be addressed. So and as of today, you can find already some competitive low carbon production hydrogen, depending on where you are in and to which market you will attend. Just to give an example of that, last week, Raízen, a joint venture of Cosan and Shell, just announced a 5-year supply contract with Yara, the international fertilizer company, to supply biomethane from ethanol production, so that Yara could produce green hydrogen and ammonia from that biomethane. So this is happening today. There is a lot of projects being announced in Brazil, and if you can find the proper business model, you can like anticipate several steps by doing that. Well, I think I took too long. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. Thank you very much for Giovanni, Marcos, Daniel, Tom, Jörg. I will just leave the floor to Marian for the closing words. And thank you. We had a great audience. We had here at some moment 170 people watching, and already asking for, can we have access to the presentation? So I don't know, I will check with the panelists, but if yes, they will be in CEBRI's page. So thank you very much, all of you. Very interesting and enlightening conversation. So Marian, for the closing words.
Thank you so much. And, you know, let me just thank all the speakers for such enlightening and qualified discussions. And also the audience for, you know, posting really, really good questions. And although, you know, the speakers have stated that we have some challenges ahead, I am quite optimistic about the development of hydrogen globally. But as also the speakers have stated, it is clear to me, you know, international cooperation is key in developing a global hydrogen market. And to quote Marcus, partnership is key, simple as that. And in that respect, you know, the development of rules and regulations nationally and internationally is imperative. And this goes for both hydrogen itself and hydrogen-based solutions within different sectors. And therefore, Norway are actively engaged in several international initiatives. We have frequent dialogue on hydrogen with other countries, of course, and the EU. And we are, as I said in my opening, eager and willing to collaborate with Brazil, as we always have in so many sectors. You know, in fact, Brazil and Norway, we have always collaborated in the new frontiers of the energy sector. And I'm sure it will not be different this time. Because both our countries, we have key competence, we have seen that today, and experience from the renewable sector, the petroleum sector, the industrial sector, and the maritime sector. And that is forming a solid foundation for taking hydrogen in its many colors to the next level. And finally, speaking of many colors, I would like to leave a final message that is close to my heart. We must not forget that energy transition should not just be a change of energy sources. We should work together to promote inclusive, diverse, and sustainable jobs as we move ahead. Transition must be a driver for social economic development. It is our responsibility as members of the international community to act in a true transformational spirit and hopefully delivering a better world for the generations to come. I thank you all. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you. Bye-bye to everybody. Thank you very much. Ciao.